I'll take that fat obese thing for free. Mountain man buys abused bride at town auction, autumn 1876. Morning fog clung low over Copper Valley's town square, turning the world into a blur of gray and muffled voices. In the center of it all, Lily Brennan stood, with her hands tied tightly behind her back, a rough rope biting into her skin. A plank of wood hung from her neck, the red letters crooked and cruel. Fat beast. 50 cents. Now, free her father, William Brennan, a wealthy merchant with whiskey on his breath and bitterness in his eyes, paced on the auction block beside her like he was selling a mule. "Folks," he shouted, voice hoarse from drinking and yelling all night, "I've fed this fat hog for 22 years. All she does is eat and breathe. She's emptied my pantry and shamed my family. Today, I get rid of her like the livestock she is. Who wants her? 50 cents. No? Then she's free." Laughter rippled through the crowd like a cold wind. An old woman in a black dress cupped her hands around her mouth. "You'd have to pay me to take that cow. Look at her, big as a barn. She'd eat a man out of his own house in a week." Children darted in and out of the crowd, scooping up stones and clumps of mud. One rock struck Lily's forehead. Warm blood trickled down into her eyebrow. She didn't flinch. She had cried herself empty days ago. A heavy-set man swaggered closer, eyeing her with vulgar curiosity. "How much lard you think I could render out of all that fat?" he drawled. The crowd howled with laughter. At the edge of the square, Lily's mother, Margaret, stood turned away, her face hidden beneath a black veil. She didn't come closer. She didn't call out. She didn't look at her daughter. Beside her, Lily's younger sister Rose, slim and porcelain pretty in a blue dress, sniffed in disgust. "Mother, thank God I didn't end up like her. She's humiliated us long enough." Margaret nodded stiffly. "She's been ashamed since the day she was born. Let your father be done with her." On the block, William's words cut sharper than any whip. Yesterday, he had struck Lily across the back with a leather belt because she dared to eat an extra crust of bread. "Greedy sow, you don't deserve food." Now he spread his arms above his head like some cruel ringmaster. "Come on, surely someone wants a big soft piece of meat to warm their bed on cold nights. She's free now, free." A drunken man lurched forward, reaching out to squeeze Lily's cheek as if she really were livestock. "Let's see if the fat's tender," he sneered. Lily tried to step back, but the rope held her in place. Shame burned hotter than the pain in her wrists. She closed her eyes, bracing herself, the crowd's laughter pounding in her ears. "Take your hand off her." The voice cut through the noise, low, rough, and edged with steel. The square went quiet as heads turned. A tall man stepped out from the fog, boots thudding on the packed dirt. He wore a worn buckskin coat, dark trousers, and high trail-worn boots. His hair was a shag of dark brown falling to his shoulders, his beard thick and unkempt. But it was his eyes that silenced everyone, cold, sharp green, like a forest at night. Ethan Gray Wolf Morrison, the mountain man who lived alone in the high country to the north, the man people whispered about in saloons, about the wife and unborn child he had lost in a mysterious cabin fire 5 years ago, about the way he'd turned his back on town life and civilization afterward. The drunken man snatched his hand back as if burned. "Who do you think you are, talking to me like that?" Ethan didn't even look at him. His gaze was fixed on Lily, on the blood on her forehead, the rope cutting into her wrists, the board hanging from her neck like a sentence. "I'm the man who's taken her," he said quietly. "Now step aside." The crowd parted as Ethan Morrison moved toward the platform, his step steady, deliberate. No one dared get in his way. Even men twice his size stepped back, as if the cold aura around him carved its own path. William Brennan puffed out his chest and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Well, well," he said, greed already blooming in his eyes. "The wild man comes down from his mountain. Looking for a free wife, are you?" Ethan ignored him. He reached the platform and looked up at Lily. Her breath caught. Up close, his eyes weren't just cold. They were haunted. They were the eyes of a man who had buried too many memories. He took a knife from his belt and cut the rope binding her wrists. Lily let out a small gasp when feeling rushed back into her hands, needles of pain shooting through her fingers. Ethan wrapped his coat around her shoulders. It hung on her like a protective shield. "You're safe," he said quietly. Lily stared at him, unable to speak. No one had spoken to her gently in years. William cleared his throat loudly. "Ahem! If you want her, you'll have to pay." "You said free," Ethan replied without looking at him. "That was before someone actually wanted the thing." William snorted. "Now it's $1. Take it or leave her." Ethan pulled a silver dollar from his pocket and tossed it onto the platform. "Done," the crowd murmured. A mountain man paying a whole dollar for her, for a woman he could have walked away with. William scrambled to snatch the coin, nearly slipping. "A pleasure doing business," he said, and stepped back. "You take her now. She's your problem." Lily's face crumpled with shame. She didn't want to be anyone's problem. But Ethan placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "She isn't a problem," he said. "She's a person." The square went silent. For a moment, it felt like the clouds cracked open. Ethan picked up the broken board that hung from her neck. The words, "Fat beast," glared back at him. His jaw clenched, and with one swift motion, he snapped the plank in half and dropped it at William's feet. Then he spoke to Lily again, softer. "Come." She followed him through the crowd, head down, heart pounding. People whispered as she passed. "He's lost his mind. He'll regret that. Why'd he take her? Maybe he feels sorry for the cow." Every word a needle. But Ethan's hand stayed firm on her shoulder, guiding her through the noise and hate. When they reached the edge of town, Lily whispered, Why did you take me?" She expected him to say he felt pity, or that he needed a cook, a maid, someone to work his land. Instead, Ethan stopped walking. He turned toward her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "Because no one should be thrown away," he said. Her throat tightened. She swallowed hard. Where are you taking me?" "To my cabin in the mountains," he answered. "It's a long walk. If you're tired, say so." Lily shook her head quickly. "No, I can keep going." But within minutes, her weak legs betrayed her. She stumbled, catching herself on a rock. Ethan stopped. "When was the last time you ate?" Lily lowered her eyes. I'm not sure." "Yesterday?" Lily hesitated. "3 days ago," she whispered. Anger flared in Ethan's eyes, not at her, but at what had been done to her. He reached into his satchel and handed her a piece of dried venison. "Eat." Lily held the meat between trembling fingers. I shouldn't. It'll make me fatter. Lily," Ethan interrupted gently but firmly, "you need food to walk. Eat." She took one small bite, then another. It tasted salty and smoky, and tears filled her eyes at the simple kindness. Ethan watched her for a moment, then started walking again. "I'll slow my pace," he said. "Stay close." Lily nodded and followed, her steps small but determined. Behind them, Copper Valley faded into fog. Ahead, the mountain rose, cold, unforgiving, and strangely hopeful. A new life waited there. Whether Lily deserved it was a question she didn't yet dare to ask. But Ethan Morrison had already decided something the moment he saw her being sold like livestock. No matter what she believed about herself, she was worth saving. The path into the mountains grew steeper with every step. Copper Valley disappeared behind a curtain of fog, but Lily still felt the weight of its laughter clinging to her skin like dirt that couldn't be washed away. Every snapped twig, every gust of cold wind made her flinch. Ethan walked ahead, steady and silent, as if the forest itself parted for him. After an hour, Lily's breaths turned ragged. She tried to hide it, swallowing her heaving gasps, but her legs trembled and her steps faltered. When she slipped on a wet root and nearly fell, Ethan spun around instantly. "You're exhausted," he said. Lily shook her head quickly. "No, I can keep going." Her voice was thin, fragile, as if built from scraps. Ethan studied her for a moment, then knelt and turned his back to her. "Climb on." Lily froze. What? No, I'm too heavy. I'll break your spine." "Climb on," he repeated. She hesitated, cheeks burning. She had never been carried in her life, not by her father, not by any man. She wasn't the kind of woman anyone lifted with ease or affection. But Ethan didn't waver. Slowly, trembling, she placed her hands on his shoulders and clambered onto his back. To her shock, he lifted her effortlessly, as if she weighed nothing at all. Lily buried her face against his shoulder, ashamed and startled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "For what?" Ethan asked. "For being me." The forest fell silent. Ethan adjusted his hold, one arm supporting her thighs securely. "Never apologize for existing," he said. "If someone made you believe you should, they were wrong." Warmth unfurled slowly in Lily's chest, something she hadn't felt in years. Not quite hope, not quite trust, but something dangerously close to both. After another hour, Ethan finally set her down beside a fallen log and handed her a tin cup. "Drink," he said, pouring hot water from a small kettle he'd heated over a quick fire. Lily held the cup close, letting the warmth seep into her palms. Why are you being kind to me?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He tossed another piece of wood onto the flames and stared into the fire as if it spoke a language only he understood. "People forget kindness exists," he said. "Doesn't mean I intend to." Lily nodded, but didn't look up. The truth was simpler. She didn't know how to accept kindness. She had never been taught what it felt like. When they resumed walking, the forest deepened. Shadows stretched between tall pines, and the late afternoon cold grew sharper. Ethan glanced back occasionally, adjusting his pace each time Lily lagged. She didn't notice at first, but when she did, her breath caught in her throat. He was taking care of her without saying it. By the time dusk began to settle, the smell of wood smoke drifted through the air. A stream trickled nearby, its water catching hints of orange light. And then Lily saw it. Ethan's cabin. It sat among towering pines, sturdy and weathered, with a stone chimney softly puffing smoke into the twilight. Light glowed faintly from the window, warm and golden. Lily stopped walking. It looked nothing like the harsh, cold world she had come from. It looked safe. Ethan stood beside her. "It's not much," he said, "but it's home." She whispered, almost afraid to break the moment. "It's beautiful." He opened the door and stepped aside. "Go on." Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar and smoke. A single room, spacious enough to feel open, but small enough to feel intimate. A bearskin rug stretched across the floor, pelts hung on the walls, and shelves held jars of dried herbs and food. A large wooden table dominated the center, but Lily's eyes were drawn immediately to the two beds, one large, one smaller. "You'll sleep in that room," Ethan said, nodding to a wooden door on the right. "It's yours." "Mine?" Lily stepped closer cautiously. The bed was neatly made with a wool blanket. A small wooden chest sat at the foot. There was even a vase with dried wildflowers on the windowsill. "Ethan, I can't take this room. It's too nice." "It's not too nice," he said. "It's what you deserve." Her lips parted, stunned. Before she could speak, Ethan handed her a folded bundle of clothes. "These belonged to my mother. She was small, but her dresses have room to stretch. They should fit." Lily touched the fabric, soft and worn. No one had ever given her clothes before, not clothes meant for her, not hand-me-downs meant as mockery. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan nodded once. "You need rest. After you wash up, come to the table." While Lily changed in her room, Ethan stirred a pot over the fire. The smell of stew filled the cabin, rich, savory, comforting. Lily's stomach growled loudly. She placed a hand on her belly, embarrassed. Ethan heard it. "Dinner's almost done." Lily sat across from him, hands clasped tightly, back straight, as if ready to be scolded. But Ethan simply ladled stew into her bowl. Thick broth, carrots, chunks of venison. "Eat," he said. Lily hesitated. "How much should I?" "I don't want to." "Enough," Ethan cut in. "Eat until you're full." Lily ate slowly at first, then faster, then eagerly. The warmth traveled down her throat, spreading through her limbs, dissolving the chill of the auction block still clinging to her bones. When she finished, Ethan stood and quietly refilled her bowl. Lily blinked. "You don't think I'm disgusting?" "No," Ethan said. "I think you're hungry." Her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. After dinner, Ethan washed the dishes while Lily dried them. When she reached for a bowl, her fingers brushed his. She jerked her hand back, heart racing. "Sorry," she murmured. Ethan shook his head. "Don't apologize." Silence stretched, comfortable, warm, different. Then Ethan said, voice low, "Tomorrow I'll teach you how to chop wood." "Me?" Lily pointed to herself. "You," he nodded. "You'll learn everything you need to live here." Lily swallowed. "Ethan, why are you helping me so much?" He paused, looking at the fire. "Because someone should have." It was the first time Lily's heart truly cracked open. The first morning in Ethan's cabin felt unreal. Lily woke to the sound of birds and the smell of pine drifting through the cracked window. No yelling, no footsteps stomping down the hallway, no father banging on the door, shouting for her to get up and work. For a moment, she just lay there, letting the quiet sink into her bones. Then she remembered where she was, who she was with. Ethan. She sat up quickly, heart pounding. She didn't want to seem lazy or ungrateful. She rushed to braid her hair, smoothed the dress Ethan had given her, and stepped quietly outside her room. Ethan was already awake, standing by the fireplace, sharpening his knife. The early orange light caught the planes of his face, making him look carved from stone. He glanced up when he heard her. "Morning?" Lily bowed her head slightly. "Good morning." You slept well? Yes, thank you. He nodded, returning to his work. There's water warming in the kettle. Wash up, then we'll start the day. Lily nodded and hurried to the basin. The warm water was a luxury she hadn't known in years. She washed carefully, trying not to use too much, then turned toward Ethan. I can cook breakfast, she offered, if you want. His eyes softened, just barely. Go ahead. She moved around the kitchen awkwardly at first, trying to understand where he kept things. Ethan watched her for a moment, then quietly shifted a few items closer to her reach. When she struggled to lift the heavy iron skillet, he stepped behind her. Let me. He took it from her hands effortlessly and set it over the fire. Lily swallowed hard. I can learn to do it. You will, he said, but you don't have to do everything today. The breakfast was simple: eggs, fried potatoes, and leftover stew warmed again, but Ethan ate every bite without complaint. When Lily apologized too many times, he finally sighed. Lily, stop saying sorry for breathing. She blushed and fell silent. After breakfast, Ethan led her outside. The autumn air was crisp, and sunlight filtered through the tall pines. He guided her to the chopping block behind the cabin. Today you'll learn to split logs, he said. Her eyes widened. I don't know if I can. I'm not strong like you. You don't need my strength, he said. You need technique. Watch. He set a log upright, lifted his axe, and brought it down cleanly in one motion. The wood split apart like paper. Lily flinched. Ethan stepped behind her, placing the axe in her hands. Your turn. Her pulse hammered in her ears. The handle was heavy, heavier than she expected. She lifted the axe, but her arms shook. I can't. You can, he said gently. Here. He stepped close, so close she felt the heat of him even through her dress. His hands slid over hers, guiding her grip. His chest brushed her back. She froze, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. Relax your shoulders, he murmured. Stand firm and swing. Together they brought the axe down. The log didn't split cleanly, but the blade sank halfway into it. That's good, Ethan said. Good. No one had ever used that word for her. She smiled shyly. Again? Again. They practiced until her arms shook with exhaustion. When the axe slipped from her fingers, Ethan took it gently and said, Enough for today. Lily wiped sweat from her brow, trying not to pant too loudly. Ethan handed her a cup of cool water. Thank you, she breathed. You're learning, he replied. You're stronger than you think. The praise warmed her more than the sun ever could. The rest of the day unfolded quietly. Lily swept the cabin, humming softly. Ethan mended a broken drawer while glancing at her from time to time. When she reached too high and nearly fell from a stool, he caught her waist with one arm, steadying her. She gasped. He let go immediately, stepping back as if remembering himself. Careful, he said. Lily's cheeks burned. Thank you. He grunted in acknowledgement. Later, when Lily tried to gather kindling in the yard, she cut her palm on a sharp branch. Blood welled instantly. She winced and hid her hand behind her back. Ethan noticed anyway. What happened? Nothing, she whispered. Show me. She flinched, unused to being spoken to with authority that wasn't cruelty. Slowly, she extended her hand. Ethan held her wrist with surprising gentleness, studying the small cut. He reached into his pocket for a strip of cloth. This will sting, he warned. When the alcohol touched her skin, she hissed from the pain. Ethan steadied her hand firmly, looking into her eyes. You always do that, he said. Do what? Act like you deserve to be hurt. Lily opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, I don't know how to be anything else. He tied the cloth around her palm, his fingers brushing her skin. You'll learn. The simplicity of the words undid her. She turned away abruptly so he wouldn't see her eyes fill. That evening, after dinner, they sat by the fire. Lily mended a shirt Ethan had worn nearly to shreds. Ethan carved a piece of wood, shaping it into something she couldn't yet recognize. The fire crackled softly. After a long silence, Ethan spoke. You're not what they said you are. Lily's needle paused mid-stitch. What do you mean? You're not worthless, or ugly, or a burden. Her breath hitched. How do you know? His gaze lifted to hers, steady, unwavering. Because I see you. The words struck her like lightning. He wasn't a man who wasted breath. He wasn't the type to flatter. If he said it, he meant it. Lily lowered her eyes, blinking away tears. Ethan, thank you. He nodded, returning to his carving. For a long while they existed in comfortable quiet, a kind of peace Lily had never known. When she rose to go to her room, Ethan stopped her. Lily, she turned. Yes? If you have nightmares, you can knock on my door. Her lips parted. How did you know I hear you sometimes, he said softly. It's all right. You're safe now. The firelight reflected in her eyes, shimmering with something new. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Lily. She went to her room, closing the door gently behind her, and for the first time in her life, she fell asleep, smiling. The peaceful rhythm of mountain life settled around them, gentle as snow gathering on pine needles. Days passed in quiet routines, Lily cooking, Ethan hunting, both of them working side by side with an ease neither expected. But beneath that fragile calm, something darker stirred. It began with footsteps. One morning, Lily found tracks in the mud near the edge of the clearing, boot prints, not Ethan's, large, fresh. She knelt beside them, her heart pounding. Someone had been near their home, watching. When Ethan returned from his morning hunt, she ran to him. Ethan, she whispered, pointing toward the trees. Someone was here. He examined the tracks, jaw tightening. Not wolves, not hunters. Who then? He didn't answer. That night, he double-bolted the cabin door for the first time. Over the next few days, Ethan grew restless. Lily noticed the shadows under his eyes, the way he scanned the tree line, how his hand hovered too often near the revolver at his hip. One evening, as they ate stew by the fire, she finally gathered the courage to speak. Ethan, you're worried. He didn't look up. You don't need to concern yourself. I do, Lily said softly. I'm your wife. The word seemed to strike him. He exhaled slowly, setting his spoon down. There's something you should know, he began, something I didn't tell you. Lily's stomach clenched. About your past? Ethan nodded. There was a man in Copper Valley named Carlton Reed. Wealthy, dangerous. He wanted my land, wanted every acre of this mountain to build a logging empire. When I refused to sell, he tried to burn me out. Lily drew in a sharp breath. The fire, the one that... Yes, Ethan murmured. Anna died because of him. Reed wasn't the one who lit the match, but he paid the men who did. Is he still alive? For now. Ethan's voice was edged stone. Lily's fingers trembled around her bowl. Do you think he's looking for you? Ethan stared into the fire. No, he's looking for you. Lily gasped softly. Me? Why? Your father, Ethan said. William Brennan owes money to half the county, Carlton Reed included. Selling you was his way of paying debts. Reed expected you delivered to him. Lily's blood ran cold. So when you walked off that platform with me, Ethan continued, you didn't just humiliate your father, you disrupted a deal Reed considered already done. The room spun. Lily gripped the edge of her chair. He wants me back. He wants ownership, Ethan corrected. He doesn't care about you. He cares about what controlling you means. Lily swallowed hard. So I'm still property. Ethan leaned forward, his voice suddenly fierce. You are not property, not anymore, not ever again. Her breath shook. But if Reed comes, he'll meet me, Ethan said simply, and he won't walk away. The fire crackled between them. Lily reached out slowly, touching his hand. Ethan, I'm scared. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid. I know, but I'm here. I won't let anyone take you. Lily's voice broke. You shouldn't have to fight my battles. He met her eyes. You're not a battle. You're my reason. Rumors traveled faster than wind over the mountain. A week later, Lily found a folded piece of paper wedged under the front step. Ethan read it without expression. I'll be coming for what's mine. C.R. Lily felt the world tilt. Ethan? He crumpled the note in one fist. Pack a small bag, he said. Only the essentials. We may need to leave the cabin for a while. But this is your home. It's just wood and nails, Ethan said. You're the part I'm keeping. Tears blurred her vision. I don't deserve... Stop, he said gently. Stop thinking love must be earned. It isn't. She covered her mouth, trying not to cry, but emotion spilled over anyway. Ethan stepped closer, brushing a tear from her cheek with the back of his knuckles. You're not alone, Lily, he said. Not anymore. The storm came on a night when the sky was a bruise of purple and black. Rain hammered the roof. Wind lashed the walls. The fire sputtered, fighting to stay alive. Lily couldn't sleep. Every crack of thunder made her flinch. She wrapped a blanket around herself and stepped into the main room. Ethan was standing by the window, staring into the darkness. Can't sleep? He murmured without turning. Neither can you, she replied softly. He finally faced her. His shoulders were tense, his eyes shadowed. She stepped closer, hesitating only a moment before placing a hand on his arm. Sit with me, she whispered. They settled by the fire, Lily curling her legs beneath her, Ethan leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. After a long silence, she spoke. Do you regret taking me? His head snapped toward her. No. You didn't even know me, she said. You risked everything for someone who wasn't worth... Lily, he said sharply, don't finish that sentence. She bit her lip. You are worth defending, he continued, worth saving, worth choosing. Her breath trembled. Why do you believe that? Because I see you, Ethan said, voice low. I see the woman who works until she's shaking, who smiles even when it hurts, who tries to give more than she has because she's never had anything of her own. I see your heart, Lily, and I won't let the world break it again. She covered her face with both hands, her shoulders shaking. Ethan gently pulled her hands away. You're not alone, he said again. You're safe with me. A crack of thunder shook the cabin. Lily jumped and instinctively pressed against him. His arm wound around her shoulders. She didn't pull away. Ethan, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm, I don't want to run any more. He looked down at her. Then we don't run. She lifted her head slightly. "But Reed—" "Let him come," Ethan said, steel in his tone. "This time, I'm not losing the woman I love." Her breath caught. "Love?" His eyes softened, not cold, not haunted, but achingly human. "Yes, Lily, love." She leaned into him fully then, her forehead resting against his chest. His hand cupped the back of her head. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, something stronger than fear began to take root. Morning came cold and sharp, the storm's tail still dragging through the treetops. Lily barely slept. Ethan didn't sleep at all. He sat by the window through the night, revolver on the table, jaw clenched tight enough to crack stone. When dawn finally broke, a thin mist rolled across the clearing like a warning, and then they heard it. Hoofbeats, slow at first, then growing louder, heavier, multiplying. Lily's breath hitched. Ethan rose from his chair and stepped toward the door. "Stay behind me," he said. Lily obeyed, clutching the back of his shirt, fingers trembling. Her pulse roared like thunder in her ears. 5 horses emerged from the veil of mist. 4 men in dusters, rifles strapped to their saddles. And at their center, Carlton Reed, dressed in a long black coat, hat tipped low, a smug smile curling beneath his mustache. He looked at the cabin as if inspecting a piece of land he already owned. "Morning, Morrison," Reed drawled. "Heard you stole something that belongs to me." Ethan opened the door but didn't step out. His voice was even. "Turn around and go home, Reed." Reed chuckled, a sound like rattlesnake tails. "You always were amusing, but I didn't ride all the way up this mountain for a conversation. I came for the girl." Lily's knees weakened. Ethan felt her sway behind him and shifted slightly, shielding her from Reed's line of sight. "You have no claim," Ethan said. "I bought her fair." Reed's eyes gleamed. "You paid her father. You didn't pay me." His smile sharpened. "She's worth more than $1, Morrison. A man in my position can't afford to let merchandise walk away unpaid." Lily flinched at the word merchandise. Ethan's jaw flexed. "She is my wife," he said. Reed laughed outright this time. "Your wife? Good God, Morrison, the mountain air must have rotted your brain. That woman is nothing but—" Ethan stepped forward, 1 step only, but it hit the earth like a hammer. "If you finish that sentence," he said quietly, "I'll put you in the ground." Reed's men straightened in their saddles, hands drifting toward rifle handles. Lily tightened her grip on Ethan's shirt, terrified the next moment would explode into violence. Reed, however, seemed to enjoy the tension. "Fiery, aren't you? But you forget how this works. I have legal contracts. I have half the sheriff's office in my pocket. The girl is coming with me one way or another." Ethan didn't blink. "She isn't leaving this mountain." Reed tilted his head, studying Ethan with an expression of cold amusement. "You don't have the manpower for a fight, Morrison. You don't have numbers, or allies, or a reason to keep struggling." Ethan shifted slightly so Reed could see Lily's hand gripping his shirt. "I have every reason," he said. Reed's eyes narrowed. "Move aside." "No." Reed's voice dropped to a hiss. "Last warning, Morrison. The woman steps out, or we kill you both and take her body afterward." Lily gasped. Ethan's hand slid back, finding hers, gripping tight. His voice remained calm, even gentle. "You listen to me now," he said, and Lily realized he was speaking to her, not Reed. "You don't run. You don't hide. You stay right here behind me." She whispered, "Ethan, I can't let you die for me." "You're not letting me," he replied softly. This is my choice. Reed snapped his fingers. 3 rifles were raised. Lily screamed, "No!" But Ethan stood firm, unflinching. "Reed," he called out, "you fire that rifle, and you'll start a war you will not live to finish." Reed's lip curled. "You think you frighten me?" "No," Ethan said, "but the law will come when your men turn up dead, and the whole county already knows who burns down homes and buys daughters like cattle. You'll hang, and you know it." For the first time, Reed hesitated. His eyes flicked to his men who suddenly looked less certain. Ethan pressed on, voice low, lethal. "Leave now. Walk away while you still can." A long, brittle silence stretched through the clearing. Finally, Reed spat into the dirt. "This isn't over, Morrison." "No," Ethan agreed, "it's not." Reed pulled his rein sharply, turned his horse, and rode off. His men followed, though not without glancing nervously back at the mountain man they'd nearly died challenging. When the last hoofbeat faded, Ethan closed the door and locked it. Lily collapsed against him, sobbing into his chest. He wrapped his arms around her tightly, burying his face in her hair. "It's all right," he whispered. "I've got you." "You could have died," she cried. "I'd do it again," he said, 100 times over. Outside, the mountain stood silent, witness to the moment of fragile love turned unbreakable. The hours after Reed's retreat passed in a fragile silence. Ethan kept watch by the window until the sun dipped low behind the pines. Lily moved quietly around the cabin, trying to steady her trembling hands as she cooked supper. Every so often, her eyes drifted to Ethan, to the firm line of his shoulders, the tension in his jaw, the way exhaustion weighed heavy on him, though he refused to sit. When supper was ready, she set a bowl before him. "Ethan," she said softly, "eat, please." He finally turned from the window, letting out a long breath. "You don't have to take care of me." "I want to," she answered, "the same way you take care of me." For the first time since morning, his expression softened. He sat, and they ate in quiet. Lily watched his hands, large and scarred, steady around the spoon. She watched the way he tried to hide the wince when his shoulder, a leftover ache from earlier skirmishes, pulled too sharply. When the meal was done, Ethan rose to check the door one last time. Lily stood from the table, gathering the courage that had been building all day. "Ethan," she whispered, "sit with me." He hesitated, but only a moment. Then he joined her near the fire, both of them sinking into the gentle warmth from the hearth. Outside, night draped the mountains, cold and endless. Inside, the fire filled the cabin with a soft glow that made everything feel closer, safer. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Lily said, "I thought I'd lost you today." Ethan turned to her. "You didn't." "I was so afraid," she murmured, voice trembling. "Not for me, for you. The thought of you getting hurt because of me." "Lily," he interrupted gently, "I don't protect you because you're a burden. I protect you because you matter." Her breath caught. "You say that as though it's simple." "It is," Ethan replied. "You didn't ask for any of this. You didn't deserve the life your family gave you, and you certainly don't deserve Reed's obsession." He paused, grounding himself. "But you deserve safety. You deserve peace. And whatever the world tries to take from you, I'll stand in its way." Lily blinked as tears formed. "You would do that? For me?" He reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek with the back of a finger. "I already have." The cabin crackled with the sound of burning logs. Lily leaned closer until her shoulder touched his. Ethan stilled, then gently wrapped an arm around her, pulling her against him. She melted into the warmth of his chest. "You're safe here," he murmured against her hair. "This is your home now, if you want it to be." Her tears fell freely then, soft, quiet tears that soaked into his shirt. "I do want it," she whispered, "more than anything." Ethan held her closer, his voice barely a breath. "Then stay, Lily. Stay with me." She lifted her head, searching his eyes. Steady, green, full of something she hadn't dared to believe was meant for her. "Do you think," she asked tremulously, "that love like ours can survive the world outside this mountain?" Ethan lowered his forehead to hers. "If we stand together," he said, "there's nothing out there strong enough to break us." And in the soft glow of the fire, wrapped in the warmth of his arms, Lily believed him. Some stories remind us that love doesn't always arrive dressed in beauty or perfection. Sometimes it comes in the form of two wounded people who find shelter in each other when the world has turned them away. If you're listening to this from somewhere far, another country, another time zone, another life entirely, know that your presence here matters. These stories travel across mountains, oceans, and languages just to reach you. Tell me, where in the world are you listening from today? And if you still believe in love that chooses the broken, the forgotten, the unwanted, then stay close. The next story is already waiting for you. Take your clothes off now. Mountain Man orders. Fat Bride. He won in poker game. Take your clothes off now. The words cracked through the smoke-filled saloon like a whip. Every card player, every drunk miner, every painted girl leaning on the bar turned to stare at the woman standing on the makeshift platform by the piano. She froze. Mae Donovan clutched at the front of her faded blue dress, knuckles white, chest heaving. At 26 and over 120 kilos, she'd heard every insult a frontier town could throw. Cow, hog, whale. But tonight, Silverton had reached a new cruelty. "Did you not hear me?" Silas Crow snarled, his cheeks flushed red from whiskey and rage. "I said take them off, all of them. These gentlemen paid to see what I lost in that hand." Laughter rolled through the Lucky Ace saloon like a filthy tide. Silas was a broad man gone soft, his expensive waistcoat straining over his belly, diamond stick-pin glinting under the lamps. A week ago, he'd brought Mae off the stagecoach as his mail-order bride from back east, bragging that he'd finally bought himself a proper woman. By the second night, he'd been calling her a fraud, a catfish, a fat trick. Tonight, he'd gone one step further. He'd wagered her, a living, breathing woman, written down on the table like another stack of chips. Mae stared at the warped floorboards, vision blurring. The room spun with smoke and noise, but inside her chest there was only one sound, the sour, familiar voice in her own head. "Of course he bet you. You're worth less than his boots." Silas threw an arm wide, presenting her to the room. "You all saw it, boys. I lost her fair and square to Dalton, a fat bride for a lucky hand, and before she goes off to wherever that mountain ghost drags her, you get a show. Dress off. Let them see what $500 bought and lost." Catcalls erupted. "Come on, sweetheart, don't be shy." Never seen that much woman in my life. A tomato, half rotten, flew and burst wetly against the wall inches from her head. Someone whistled that long, ugly whistle men used when they knew a woman couldn't get away. Mae's fingers trembled on the buttons at her throat. If she refused, Silas would drag her down and tear the dress himself. He'd done worse in the dark of his back room when no one was watching. Her eyes burned, her throat closed. If you're listening to this right now, maybe you've had a crowd laugh at you too. Maybe not this loud, not this vicious, but enough to make your skin feel wrong on your own bones. Tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from, and have you ever wished you could disappear the way May did in that moment? The piano player's hands hovered above the keys. The bartender stopped drying glasses. The room leaned in as May's fumbling fingers slipped on the first button. That was when the doors of the saloon slammed open so hard they rattled on their hinges. A tall man filled the doorway, winter wind curling around his boots, snow still clinging to the shoulders of his worn leather coat. The lantern light caught the scar that slashed across his jaw, the ice-pale eyes that took in the scene in a single, deadly sweep. Tobias Dalton, mountain man, tracker, killer of men who deserved it if the rumors were true. His gaze pinned Silas, then slid to May, shaking on the platform with one button undone and 100 eyes on her. His jaw clenched. "She's not taking anything off," he said, voice low and flat. "Not for you, not for any of you." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Cards lay scattered, whiskey glasses paused halfway to mouths, the piano player's fingers hovering over the keys. Silas Crow barked a laugh that came out too high, too thin. "Dalton, this ain't your concern. Go crawl back to your mountain. I'm having a little entertainment with my property." Tobias's eyes didn't leave May. He took in the torn seam at her shoulder, the bruises yellowing along her arms, the way she was trying to make herself smaller, like she could fold into the grain of the wood and vanish. Then his gaze slid to the table in the corner where the poker game had ended not 10 minutes earlier. The deck was still there, the scattered chips, the scrawled slip of paper with Silas's heavy hand on it. Bride M. Donovan. Tobias walked forward, boots thudding slow, deliberate. Men stepped out of his way without thinking about it. The cold followed him in, fingers of wind licking at ankles and lamplight. He stopped at the platform, looking up at May properly now. Up close, she was even softer than she'd looked from across the room. Rounded cheeks flushed red with shame, a generous span of hips pressing against worn fabric, arms that looked like they'd been made for holding babies and carrying baskets, not for hugging herself in terror. Her eyes were the worst of it, a pale hazel rimmed red, dull in that way he recognized all too well. He'd seen it in the mirror for years after Miriam died. The look of someone who decided the world would be better off if they didn't take up so much space in it. Tobias turned his head, slow, to Silas. "Say it again," he said quietly. "Tell me she's your property." Silas spread his hands, trying to play to the crowd, but sweat shone at his temple. "She is. I paid good money for her. Company sent me lies instead of the girl they promised. I got cheated, so I did what any man would do. I used her for something else. I put her on the table. You saw it. She's a stake. She's a joke. That's all she's good for." May flinched. Tobias felt something inside his chest twist hard, the way a trap snaps shut on bone. "You put her on the table," Tobias said, "and you lost." Silas snorted. "Don't act high and mighty, Dalton. You were happy enough to write her name down as the prize when you saw that pot grow. Don't tell me you suddenly care what happens to a pig in a dress." A murmur ran through the room. Eyes darted between them. Some men were grinning, waiting for blood. Some looked away, shame tugging at their mouths. A few watched May, not the men at all, like they were wondering what it might feel like to be the one on the platform. Tobias's face didn't change, but his hand shot out, fisting in Silas's waistcoat and slamming him back against the nearest support post. The saloon went dead quiet. "You listen to me," Tobias said, voice low and even. "You wrote down that she was the stake. You watched me call your bluff. You watched me turn over 4 queens, and you pushed the whole pot to my side, money, land claim, and her." Silas clawed at his hand. "You can't—" "I can," Tobias said. "And I did. I won the hand. I claimed the pot." His grip tightened, knuckles turning white. "You don't get to change the rules now because losing hurts." He let go. Silas slumped, gasping. Tobias turned his back on him, an insult in itself, in a town where no man turned his back on another unless he was certain of his own skill with steel and lead. He stepped up onto the platform next to May. Up close, she could see the lines carved at the corners of his eyes, the scar under his jaw, the silver at his temples that didn't match his age. He smelled of pine sap, wood smoke, leather, and snow. "May Donovan," he said, keeping his voice low enough that it didn't carry to the back of the room. "That's your name, isn't it?" She swallowed. Her tongue felt thick in her mouth. "Yes." "You came out from Boston 6 months ago?" She blinked. "How did you—" "Silas boasts when he drinks," Tobias said. "He likes to talk about what he owns." He paused. "He doesn't own you anymore. Do you understand that?" Her brain could barely keep up. An hour ago, she'd been scrubbing Silas's floors, praying he'd be too drunk to notice if she stole a crust of bread. 10 minutes ago, she'd been a punchline, a wager, a crowd's entertainment. Now this man, this walking rumor with the winter in his eyes, was saying she belonged to no one. Her throat closed. "I don't understand anything." "That's fair," he said, "but you're coming with me." Silas staggered forward, face purple. "The hell she is! You're not dragging my property out of here like some prize." Tobias didn't even look at him. His hand went to the revolver at his hip, and his thumb eased the hammer back with a soft, lethal click. The sound cut through the saloon like a knife. "Last chance, Crow," he said. "Do I walk out with what I won, or do you get buried in that fancy coat?" The bartender, who'd seen too many men die on blood-slick floorboards, lifted both hands. "Silas, let it go. We all saw the hand. You wrote her name on the slip yourself?" A few other men muttered agreement. No one liked Silas enough to die for him. Not over this, not over her. Silas's gaze swung from Tobias's gun to the watching faces, to May. For a second, something like real malice flickered in his eyes. "You're not worth dying for," he spat at her. "You never were." The words hit harder than any fist. May's shoulders hunched. Her fingers curled around the edge of the platform to keep from falling. Tobias stepped closer to her, putting his body between hers and the room. "Get your coat," he said quietly. "Whatever you own, you take it. We leave now." I don't own anything," she whispered. "He sold my trunk for gambling money." Tobias's jaw flexed. He shrugged off his heavy coat and swung it around her shoulders in one smooth motion. The weight of it nearly buckled her knees. Heat and the smell of smoke wrapped her like a promise. "Then you start over," he said, "on my mountain." He guided her down from the platform, a hand at her elbow, steady and firm, but not possessive. As they moved through the parted crowd, she kept expecting someone to grab her, to pull her back, to demand that the show go on. No one did. When the cold night air hit her face, it stung like a slap. Tobias helped her into the saddle of a big, dark gelding tied to the post, then swung up behind her, one arm braced on either side so she was caged but not crushed. "Where are we going?" she asked, voice small. "Home," he said. She almost laughed at that. Home. The word had been a joke for so long she'd forgotten how to hold it in her mouth without it tasting bitter. The horse started forward, hooves crunching through fresh snow. Behind them, the Lucky Ace's windows glowed warm and golden, but the sound of laughter and music felt like it belonged to another universe. May looked back once, seeing Silas in the doorway, a dark blot of fury against the light. Then she turned her face toward the mountains, toward the line of black pines and the unknown waiting beyond. Maybe you've had a moment like that too. One step away from everything that broke you, one step toward something you don't trust yet, but can't resist. Snow fell in slow, drifting sheets as Tobias guided the gelding toward the tree line. The lamps of Silverton faded behind them until they were nothing but dull glimmers, swallowed by the night. May wrapped Tobias's heavy coat tighter around her shoulders, trying to steal every bit of heat she could from the thick fur lining. Her fingers trembled, not just from the cold, but from the sheer impossibility of what had just happened. She had been a wager, a spectacle. And this man, this silent, scarred mountain ghost, had taken her away from it all like she mattered, like she was worth claiming. They traveled without speaking for almost an hour. Only the crunch of hooves and the distant cry of a lone wolf filled the air. Finally, May found her courage. "Tobias?" Her voice was small, breath fogging the air. What are you going to do with me?" He didn't answer immediately. She felt his chest rise and fall behind her, slow and measured, like he was choosing his words with the same care he used to pick his steps through the snow. "You're coming with me to the cabin," he said. May waited. She knew he wasn't finished. "You'll stay there," he continued, "until you can decide what you want." "What I want?" May almost laughed. It came out thin and bitter. "Men like you don't ask women like me what we want." He didn't bristle. He didn't defend himself. He simply said, "I'm not most men." May didn't know what to say to that, so she stayed quiet. The trail steepened, climbing into the darker parts of the forest where the moonlight barely pierced the branches. May shivered violently. Tobias noticed. "You cold?" "A little." "You can lean back," he said. "The wind cuts harder up here." She hesitated, but cold won over pride. Slowly, carefully, she leaned until her back touched his chest. The solid warmth of him seeped into her bones. She hadn't realized how long it had been since someone touched her without cruelty in their hands. Tobias's arm shifted. One looped lightly around her to steady her as the horse climbed. Not possessive, not rough, just steady. After a while, May spoke again. I'm not used to kindness." "I know," he said softly. "How could you know?" "Because you flinched every time someone walked by," Tobias said. "Because your shoulders curled in like you were apologizing for breathing, because you apologized when I put my coat on you." Tears stung her eyes. She blinked them away angrily, unwilling to let them fall. "I learned to disappear," she whispered. "I noticed," he said. "Most men at that saloon didn't. That's the difference." The trail opened into a clearing where the moon lit the snow blue-white. Tobias slowed the horse to a halt and pointed ahead to a narrow pass between two cliffs. "We stay here till the wind settles," he said. "That pass can throw a horse in weather like this." He swung down first, then lifted May gently from the saddle. Her feet sank into deep snow, and she gasped at the cold seeping through the thin soles of her worn shoes. Tobias cursed under his breath. "He didn't even give you boots." "He didn't give me much of anything." Tobias reached into his saddlebag, pulled out wool-wrapped moccasins, and pressed them into her hands. "Put those on. They'll keep you warm." May stared at them. Sturdy, hand-stitched, far better than anything she'd owned in months. "I can't take these," she whispered. "You can," he said simply. "Why?" "Because I don't aim to carry you up the mountain." His tone softened. "And because you need them." She sank onto a fallen log, pulled off her tattered shoes, and slipped into the warm moccasins. They fit better than they should have. "You guessed my size," she murmured. "I've got eyes," he said. "Not cruel, not mocking, just a fact." He built a small fire to keep them warm while they waited. He worked quietly, every movement efficient, splitting kindling, striking flint, shielding the first sparks with his hands. When the flames rose, he motioned for her to sit closer. May hugged her knees, letting the heat thaw the numbness in her toes. Tobias sat across from her, the firelight casting sharp planes across his face, scarred, weathered, but undeniably strong. She studied him cautiously. "Why did you do it?" "Do what?" "Take me." His gaze didn't waver. "Because leaving you there would have eaten at me for the rest of my life." "But you don't even know me." "Didn't need to. I know what I saw." His expression darkened. "And I've seen men like Silas before. The kind who break things just to remind themselves they can." May stared into the flames. Silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither dared to name. After a long while, Tobias spoke again. "We'll reach the cabin by tomorrow night. It's cold, but the hearth's strong and the roof holds. You'll have food, a bed, and a door that only I can open." May flinched lightly. "Only you?" "Yes," he said, "because it has to be barred from the inside. Nothing gets in at night unless I let it." She swallowed. What kind of things?" "Wolves," he said. "Mountain lions. Men sometimes." May hugged the coat closer. "I've never lived anywhere like this." "You'll learn if you want to." "And if I don't?" she whispered. "Then I'll take you into the nearest town in spring," Tobias said. "Find a place that treats you better than where you've been. You'll decide, not me." The idea stunned her. She'd been owned, traded, mocked, used. Now she was being given a choice she didn't know how to hold. She looked at him across the flames, snow falling softly behind him like ashes descending from the sky. "Why are you giving me that?" she asked. "A choice?" Tobias lifted his eyes to hers, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw no storm there, only a quiet, aching truth. "Because someone should have," he said. The wind eased. Tobias stood, stamped out the fire, and beckoned her forward. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you home." Her breath caught. Home. It was too big a word, too fragile. But she followed him anyway. The cabin appeared just before dusk the next day, rising from the snow like something carved straight out of the mountain itself. Smoke drifted lazily from the stone chimney, curling against the indigo sky. A lantern glowed behind one frosted window, its light warm and golden, so painfully unlike the cold lamplight of Silas's house that May's throat tightened without warning. Tobias reined in the gelding. "This is it." May stared. The cabin wasn't large, but it was strong. Thick logs, sturdy joints, a roof weighted with slabs of timber to withstand winter storms. It looked like a place built by hands that understood survival, not comfort, but it felt real, solid, safe in a way she hadn't felt safe in years. A place that didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. Tobias swung down, then helped her from the saddle. As her boots hit the snow, her legs threatened to buckle. 2 days of cold, fear, and trembling adrenaline had drained whatever strength she had left. Tobias caught her elbow without comment. "Inside," he said quietly, "before the temperature drops." He pushed the door open. Warmth washed over her immediately, dry, gentle, smelling of pine sap, wood smoke, and something faintly sweet she couldn't place. Inside, the space was tidy and surprisingly inviting. A stone hearth dominated one wall, flames licking a cast-iron pot. A worn but sturdy table stood near the window, a row of hooks along the wall holding coats, tools, and a lantern. Shelves lined with jars of preserved berries, salt, herbs, and dried meat filled an alcove near the kitchen. And in the corner, a narrow staircase led to a loft May couldn't see fully from below. "You'll put your things here?" Tobias said, motioning to a bench beside the door. She looked down at herself. Thin dress, his heavy coat, her new moccasins. "I don't have things." He paused, then nodded once. "That'll change." Tobias hung his own coat on a peg and knelt to unlace his boots. May hesitated awkwardly before kneeling beside him to remove hers. The rush of warm air against her ankles felt almost decadent. "Sit," Tobias said, gesturing to the chair nearest the fire. "Warm yourself?" May didn't argue. She sat, stretching her hands toward the flames, letting heat seep into her bones. Tobias moved around the cabin with quiet efficiency, stowing gear, checking the firebox, pulling a kettle from the shelf, and filling it with snow to melt over the fire. "You must be hungry," he said without looking back. "I am," she admitted, "but I don't want to trouble you." His head turned. "You're not trouble?" She blinked. No one had ever said that to her, not once. While he prepared supper, May's gaze roamed the room. Everything had a purpose. Every surface was clean, every tool put away. Her hands twitched with instinct. She'd been cleaning Silas's house for so long, she'd forgotten what it felt like to simply sit. Her eyes drifted upward to the loft. "Is that where you sleep?" she asked. "For now." Tobias stirred the pot, steam rising. "You'll take the downstairs bed." She startled. "I can't take your bed." "You can," he said simply. "It's warmer, closer to the fire. You need it more." May's throat tightened. "You don't even know me. Why are you being kind?" Tobias paused at the hearth. "Because someone should have been." The kettle began to hiss softly. Tobias ladled stew into 2 bowls, handing one to her. The scent made her dizzy. Rich broth, potato, carrot, chunks of venison so tender they fell apart under her spoon. "Eat slow," he said, sitting across from her. "Your stomach's not used to real food." She nodded, though controlling her hunger was harder than she expected. She took small bites, savoring each one, fighting the urge to wolf it down. Tobias watched her without judgment, only a quiet awareness that made her feel seen rather than scrutinized. Halfway through the meal, she whispered, "Thank you." "You don't owe me thanks," he said. But she did. Not for the food, not for the warmth, for the dignity. After supper, Tobias stood and lifted a basin from a shelf. "Wash basin's warm. You can clean up before bed." May stared at him. You want me to bathe?" Not out in the cold, he said. Here, I'll step outside while you do. No, she said quickly, fear flaring. It's dark. If something's out there. Tobias's gaze softened. I'll stay by the door. I won't look. She believed him. She didn't know why, but she did. He filled the basin with warm water and set it beside the hearth. Then he turned his back and walked to the far wall, crossing his arms and facing the door. May undressed slowly, peeling off the ragged dress, her underclothes, Tobias's coat folded carefully on a chair. She lowered herself into the basin, biting back a gasp. The warmth wrapped around her bruised skin like a balm. Dirt, dried blood, and humiliation washed away in brown-gray swirls. She scrubbed quietly, aware of Tobias's rigid stillness across the room. When she finished, she whispered, I'm done. He turned, approached only long enough to hand her a clean linen shirt and thick wool trousers. They'll be loose, but they'll do until I get to town. May changed quickly, the clothes hanging soft and warm against her skin. She felt almost safe, human. Tobias looked her over briefly, not with a man's hunger, but with a caretaker's concern. Better. She almost smiled. He showed her the downstairs bed, a simple wooden frame, thick mattress stuffed with feathers, heavy quilts stitched with care. May touched the fabric reverently. It's beautiful. It's a bed, Tobias said. You sleep here tonight. And you? Her voice trembled. I'll take the loft. She shook her head. I can't take your bed. I'm not. She gestured helplessly to herself. I'm not worth that. Tobias leaned closer, his voice a low rumble. May, you are worth a bed. Her breath caught. She couldn't speak. He stepped back. If you need me, you call. She climbed under the quilts. The weight of them pressed her into the mattress in the gentlest way. Tobias extinguished all but one lantern, then ascended the ladder to the loft with quiet steps. For the first time in months, maybe years, May lay in a bed where no one would drag her out by her hair. No lock clicked from outside. No footsteps crept down the stairs to claim her. Only silence, only the crackle of fire, only the knowledge that someone who could break a man in half had chosen to stop breaking the world long enough to shelter her. She closed her eyes, breath trembling, heart pounding with confusion and something dangerously close to hope. Up in the loft, Tobias lay awake longer than he meant to, listening to the soft, even breaths of the woman he'd brought out of hell. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, the cabin didn't feel so empty. Morning came quietly on the mountain, muted light slipping through the frost-rimmed window, the slow settling of snow from the roof, the whisper of wind slipping beneath the logs. May woke before she meant to, unsure at first where she was. For a few seconds, panic crawled up her throat. No basement, no locked door, no footsteps coming to hurt her. The warmth of the quilts anchored her back to reality. Tobias's cabin. Safety. She lay still a moment, letting the truth settle in her chest like a warm stone. Then she heard footsteps overhead, slow, steady, familiar. She pushed herself upright, wincing at the stiffness in her back. Tobias descended the ladder silently, already dressed, dark Henley, worn trousers, boots laced, hair tied back. He looked carved from the morning itself. You slept, he said. Did you? He hesitated. Not enough. His eyes scored her face, checking for shadows or fear. The bed treats you all right? Yes, better than I deserve. Tobias's jaw tightened. We're not saying things like that anymore. May's cheeks heated. She nodded. Breakfast was a quiet ritual. Him at the stove, Her at the table, the scent of sizzling venison and fresh coffee filling the air. She tried to help, but Tobias nudged her back gently. Not until your bruises heal. I can at least stir something. Sit, he said, though not unkindly. She sat. He set a plate in front of her. Eggs, bread warmed on the hearthstone. Real food, real care. She felt her throat tighten again. Tobias, she murmured, I don't understand you. He didn't look up from his plate. Understand what? Why you're doing all this. Why you're being kind. He paused mid-bite, set his fork down. For a long moment, the fire crackled between them. Finally, he answered, Because I've seen what happens when men look at someone and see property instead of a person. May swallowed hard. She'd expected something simple, something brusque. Not that. He continued, voice low, Because once, someone I cared for needed help, and I wasn't there in time. She froze. The room suddenly felt too still, too fragile. She didn't know everything, but she knew enough to understand the weight behind his words. Tobias, she whispered, it wasn't your fault. You don't know that. No, she said softly, but you know what was Silas's fault. Yet you blame yourself easier than you blame him. Why? His eyes flickered to hers, storm gray rimmed with something deeper than anger. Because Silas is exactly the kind of man I used to be. May's breath caught. No, she whispered. No, you're nothing like him. You didn't know me years ago. He leaned back, fingers curling into fists on the table. I was a different kind of man, one who thought taking what he wanted was the same as deserving it, one who didn't care who broke under his boots. Losing Miriam. He paused, breath dragging rough. It should have changed me sooner. It didn't. I tried to bury the parts that hurt instead of fixing the parts that needed fixing. May's chest ached. She reached out, slow, unsure, and laid her hand over his. His hand stilled beneath hers, warm, calloused, trembling almost imperceptibly. You're not the man you were, she said. I saw that the moment you looked at me in the saloon. He frowned. What did you see? Someone who didn't laugh. He blinked. May. Someone who didn't join them, she insisted, her voice shaking. You saw me. Not the jokes they made, not the shame they wanted me drowning in. You saw me. His jaw flexed, and something in his eyes flickered. Pain, maybe, or recognition. Before either of them could say more, a sudden knock cracked against the cabin door, hard, fast, urgent. May jolted. The spoon fell from her fingers. Tobias was already moving. He crossed the floor in 3 steps, hand hovering near the revolver holstered at the wall. He cracked the door open a hair. A gust of icy wind swept in. Tobias! A gruff voice rasped. It's Hale. Let me in. Tobias opened the door wider. A huge man stepped inside, bearded, snow-dusted, eyes sharp. He wore buckskins and carried a rifle slung across his back. Took me 3 hours to track you, Hale said, brushing snow off his shoulders. And I got news you ain't gonna like. Tobias's entire body went still. May felt the air shift. What news? He asked. Crow, Hale said. He's telling the whole damn town you stole his wife. May's heart dropped. No, she whispered. No, that's not true. Hale glanced at her, eyes softening just slightly. I know it ain't true, but the sheriff doesn't care about truth. He cares about who pays his wages. And Crow pays plenty. May pressed a hand to her chest. What does that mean? It means, Hale said grimly, there's talk of a warrant, talk of a posse, talk of riding up this mountain to take her back. No, May breathed. No, he can't. Tobias stepped between her and the door, a shield made of flesh and bone. He won't touch her, he said. Hale lowered his voice. This ain't a barroom fight, Tobias. Crows stirring up men who want excuses to come after you. Tobias's eyes darkened. Let them come. Hale exhaled sharply. Thought you'd say that. And I'll stand with you if it comes to it. But his gaze flicked again to May, then back. This isn't just about you anymore. If they come here, they won't treat her kind. And Crow, he's spreading stories to turn the town against her. Ugly stories. Lies. What kind of lies? May whispered. Hale hesitated, jaw tightening. The kind that make men think they can do what they want with her and call it justice. Something inside May shattered. Tobias heard it, felt it, because he turned sharply and knelt beside her. May, he said, voice low but fierce, look at me. She lifted her eyes, wet and shaking. No one is taking you, Tobias said. Not while I'm breathing. Her lips trembled. But if the whole town, I don't give a damn about the town. His hand cupped her cheek, rough thumb brushing a tear away. The touch was steady, grounding, protective without trapping. You decide what happens next, he said. Not Crow, not the sheriff, you. Her voice broke. I don't know what to choose. Then until you know, Tobias said, I'll choose for you. And what is that? She whispered. That you stay, he said softly, with me, where it's safe. Hale cleared his throat, stepping back toward the door. I'll keep watch on my side of the ridge. Send a signal if anyone rides up. Tobias nodded once. Hale disappeared into the storm. Silence fell. May's heartbeat pounded in her ears. Tobias, she whispered, if they come, they'll have to get through me. But you could be hurt. I've been hurt before, he said simply. What matters is you don't go back to him. And then, before she could stop herself, May leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his chest. Tobias froze. Then his arms came around her, slow, hesitant, then firm, holding her like she was something precious, something worth defending, something already his. The warning came not with sound, but with stillness. Late afternoon light seeped weakly through the pines, staining the snow pale gold. May was chopping vegetables at the kitchen table, Tobias outside splitting wood. It was quiet, too quiet. Even the birds had gone silent. Tobias stepped inside without removing his boots. May, he said softly, stay behind me. Her pulse stuttered. They're here? He didn't answer with words. He blew out the lantern, then crossed the room and slid the rifle from its mount beside the door. The wind shifted. Voices rode with it, male, loud, drunken, hungry for violence. Tobias Stone! A voice bellowed from the tree line. Come out and hand over the woman you stole, unless you want us to burn that cabin down with both of you inside. Crow. May's blood turned to ice. Tobias cracked the door an inch, eyes narrowed. Outside, 6 riders sat on horseback, shotguns, pistols, ropes dangling from their saddles like promises. Their horses stamped and snorted, breath rising in hot clouds. Crow was front and center, a whiskey bottle in one hand, his other hand gripping the reins of a restless chestnut mare. Even from inside, May could see the hatred twisting his face. She's my property, Crow shouted. You're harboring stolen goods. Tobias didn't open the door any further. He didn't need to step outside to make himself heard. His voice was low, controlled, lethal. She isn't property, he said. Not yours, not anyone's. Crow laughed. You really think you can keep her? You think she'd stay with you if she had a choice?" Tobias's jaw tightened. May felt the heat rise under her skin, not from shame now, but fury. She wasn't hidden behind him anymore. She stepped to his side, trembling but upright. Tobias shifted, instinctively trying to move in front of her again, but May touched his arm. "No," she whispered, "not this time." Her voice was small but determined. Tobias hesitated, then gave a single nod. Crow spotted her through the crack of the door. "There she is," he sneered. "Fat little May, you forget how good you had it? Warm bed, roof, my money paying for your food. You should thank me." May swallowed hard. "You locked me in a basement," she said, voice shaking but strong. "You hurt me," Crow scoffed. "And it's a man's right to correct his woman." May felt Tobias stiffen beside her, fury building like a storm. "I was never your woman," she said. "You bought a lie and blamed me for it." Crow snorted. "You think that mountain bastard's any better? You think he wants you? You think he'd keep you if he didn't win you in a bet?" May faltered. The words hit deeper than they should have. But Tobias spoke first, voice quiet, but so full of conviction it steadied her instantly. "I don't keep people," he said. "I protect them, and she stays because she chooses to." Crow laughed so hard he dropped the whiskey bottle, letting it shatter at his horse's feet. "She chooses? Look at her. She ain't got places to go. Ain't nobody want her." May's eyes stung, but she didn't look down. She didn't hide. She lifted her chin. "I want him," she said. The words left her trembling, but free. Crow's grin disappeared. Tobias slowly pushed the door open wider, just enough that Crow could see the rifle resting steady in his hands. "You heard her," he said. "Now leave." Crow's face twisted into something monstrous. "You're going to regret crossing me, Stone." A rider to Crow's right raised his shotgun. "We could rush the cabin," he said. "He can't shoot all of us." Tobias's voice remained calm. "Hale can." The riders froze. A rifle clicked from somewhere in the pines. Then another, and another. Hale's voice cut through the icy air. "Drop your weapons, all of you!" Crow whipped his head around, panic replacing bravado. The forest was full of shadows, mountain men aiming rifles from every angle, silent as ghosts. "You brought help?" Crow hissed. "No," Tobias said. "They came on their own." Crow turned back to the cabin, hatred burning through humiliation. "This ain't over." Tobias raised the rifle. "Yes," he said softly. "It is." Crow opened his mouth to spit another threat, but Hale fired a warning shot so close the bark exploded beside Crow's boot. Crow jerked his reins and rode off, the others scrambling to follow. Silence returned. May collapsed into Tobias's chest, trembling with adrenaline. His arms wrapped around her instantly, steady as the earth itself. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. "He won't be back." She clung to him, breath shaking. "I was so scared." "I know," he whispered. "But you stood beside me. You didn't hide." May pulled back enough to look into his eyes. "Do you believe me now, that I choose you?" His hands framed her face gently, reverently. "I believed you the moment you stepped out from behind me." "Tobias," he kissed her, slow, deep, and sure, a promise made without words. When they finally broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. "You're safe here," he murmured, "as long as you'll have this place." Her tears fell warm against his palms. "I want this," May whispered. "I want you." His breath shuddered. "Then stay," he said. "Stay with me." Night settled slowly over the mountains. painting the world in deep blues and silver. The cabin glowed warm against the cold, soft light flickering through the frosted windows, smoke rising from the chimney in a gentle curl. Inside, everything felt impossibly still, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. May sat on the floor beside the hearth, wrapped in one of Tobias's wool blankets, her hands cupped around a mug of tea that smelled faintly of pine and honey. Her body still trembled from the confrontation, but her heart, fragile, bruised, hopeful, felt steadier than it ever had. Tobias knelt beside the table, setting down the oil lantern. The firelight caught in the pale scar across his jaw. His eyes, those glacier blue eyes that had terrified the whole saloon, were soft now, focused only on her. "You did more than stand your ground today," he said quietly. "You held mine too." May looked into the flames, unable to hold his gaze for long without feeling like her ribs might burst. "I was afraid," she admitted, "terrified." "Courage isn't the absence of fear," he murmured. "It's choosing something else despite it." May swallowed hard. "I chose you." He sat down beside her, close enough that she felt the heat of him even through the blanket. His fingers brushed her wrist, barely a touch, but it sent warmth through her chest in a slow tidal sweep. "I'm not used to being someone people choose," he said. "Not anymore." May looked up sharply. "Tobias." He held her gaze, and the quiet hurt in his eyes made her breath catch. "I lost a family once," he said softly. "Since then, I haven't asked anyone to stay, haven't expected them to. I learned to live alone. Easier that way, safer." Her heart tightened. "But you don't have to be alone now." He exhaled, low, shaky, as if the possibility itself frightened him more than any gun at his door. "I know." For a while, neither spoke. The fire crackled, the wind whispered against the eaves, and the cabin felt like a world carved out just for the two of them. Tobias took her hands gently, lifting them from her lap. He turned them over, thumbs brushing the roughened skin of her palms, evidence of labor, of survival, of everything she'd endured. "You deserve a place where no one ever raises a hand or a word against you," he said. "A place where you're wanted, where you're safe." May's voice was barely a whisper. "Is that here?" Tobias leaned closer, forehead nearly touching hers. "It can be," he murmured, "if you'll have it." Her throat tightened. "And you? Do you truly want me here? Not because you won me in a game, not because you felt sorry for me, but because you want me?" The question hung in the firelight, fragile, trembling, needing an answer. Tobias cupped her face, his touch calloused but impossibly gentle. "I want you," he said, "not as debt, not as pity, as mine, if you want that too." May's tear slipped free, warm against his thumb. "I do," she whispered. "I want this. I want you." He pulled her into his arms, slow and certain. She sank against him, feeling her heart settle into the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, strong, grounding, safe. Outside, winter pressed against the cabin walls. Inside, two lonely lives began at last to stitch themselves together. Where their story would go from here, whether the world outside would accept them, whether the ghosts of their pasts could be laid to rest, was still uncertain. But for tonight, in the soft golden hush of the fire, they were no longer alone. If you're still here, listening to the crackle of the fire and the echo of their quiet promises, I want to thank you. Stories like this travel far, across mountains, across time, across the distance between your heart and mine. Every comment you leave reminds me that we're not just sharing a tale, but a feeling. Tell me, where in the world are you listening from tonight? And if you still believe that love can rise from the harshest winters, stay close. The next story might be the one that finds you when you need it most.